Welcome, guys, to a brand new episode of the Poker Player Podcast. I'm your host, Andreas, and in today's episode, I got a guest who has been also in the poker industry for 10 years as a player. He has been a pot limiter enthusiast for a couple of years, and he's now a poker coach for pot limiter and has made his own application to understand solver results better. Welcome to the podcast, Rulazpoker. How are you doing today?
Welcome, Andreas. I'm fine.
Thanks for being on the podcast here. So the first question I ask always like, how do you get into poker? Like, how do you pick up this game?
Well, it was actually 10 years ago, and it was actually at an Warcraft 3 event. So I was driving to Vienna because there were pretty much the best players of Warcraft 3 in Austria competing in a big tournament against each other. And the best Warcraft 3 player, so let me tell you the prize money for the first place. This back then was like 600 euros. And for me, this was like big money. I mean, I was not earning my own money. And then this guy told me, oh, for me, it's not really about the money. I don't care about this 600 euros. And I thought, like, what the hell? I mean, I was so nervous about this, and it was just so much money for me. And I asked him, why is that? I mean, this is a lot of money. And he said, no, I'm playing online poker. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about this, but sounds pretty risky. But of course, he also grabbed my attention immediately. So yeah, he then told me about the site where you can get $50 of starting money. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I tried it out, and I saw that there was a lot of strategy involved in all this. And this made me very curious to learn more about the game. And that was pretty much where it all started.
That's very interesting, because I know a lot of guys have talked also of X-Flex here on the podcast, and a lot of the players, they have also Magic the Gathering background. And I remember still when I was at the Magic the Gathering Championship in Switzerland, and there was like a first prize of 5,000 francs. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. If I can win this tournament, this is going to be, I don't know. This was the pinnacle of it, of a Magic the Gathering. Like, I wasn't even that good. Like, I was just at the local championship. I won like a small tournament there to qualify, and I found out that I had no business. No chance I was going to win the tournament, but the money was really making me nervous. Like, hey, I can win 5,000 here with this tournament. And then just some years later, getting into poker and seeing that there's actually so much so many prizes to be won was hilarious to me. So how old were you back then? Like when that was?
It was like 18 exactly.
Okay, so you were allowed to play. That's good. No more underage playing here. Do you know Christopher Frank a little bit? His story. No. Yeah, he Lissy Stinkt. He was playing, I think, with like 15, and he was crushing the games, and then he lost like 100K or something in the process. Like, crazy story. Maybe we can have him on the podcast here someday. But really interesting how he played underage, and he just was crushing the games. And pretty interesting how you get into poker with 15. And I guess I have some people out there that do that these days, and they're making money. And it's just better to not get caught because that's basically making the money go away, right? So when you started playing poker, how did poker feel back then? Like, what was it like to start playing poker?
I mean, the game changed so much over the past years. It's really insane. I mean, back then, I remember all these videos. I mean, you had to trust the people, the coaches on the sides, right? Because you don't have any chances of pretty much learning the game on your own any better than the guys that were coaches there. And then there were things like, this spot here, this is a standard continuation bet. And that's it. So no explanation why it's a C bet, for example, what is our checking range and so on. It was just, we start with the C bet, and then we see from where it goes from there. So if we compare this to nowadays, where we have solvers, where we know that there are things like backdoor straight draws that might influence our decisions, backdoor nut flush blocker and stuff, it's just a whole different game. And I think a lot of people get scared about this, because poker back then was like way more freestyle, right? You just had so much room for your own strategy, for thinking about some plays that might work. But these days, it's more like, okay, if you do anything that deviates from the equilibrium, there is some way you'll get exploitable. And figuring out how to exploit these players these days is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting that the authority argument you're making. There were these authorities 10 years ago. They were just telling you how to play and nobody was questioning them whatsoever. Even I think like 6, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, there were, of course, no limit hold'em solvers coming up, but at the same time, a lot of people still didn't use them. And they were still making arguments that were completely wrong, especially in pot limit OMA, because solvers came up later, I guess like 2 years or 1 year ago. More and more people started using that. And yeah, it's just, you just trusted them blindly. And I think c-betting in particular was a highly overused tool. And working with solvers, one of the things that I learned the most is check back when you have a hand that benefits from checking back, like utilize your position, even in 3-bet pots where the SVR is quite low. On some board textures, it's going to make a lot of sense just checking back because you have position, you can still make some good decisions down the road, and you have some showdown value a lot when you're the 3-better in pot limit Omaha, having so many aces in your range. So I think that's one of the big changes for me in poker as well. That
I think over the past years, the meta game just changed so drastically. I mean, I also remember these times where there was like this open race 100% from the button thing. And because position is power, and yeah, you can't do anything about it, right? And especially in PLO, where you should never fold against free bets. Free betting is not the weapon against it. So these were pretty much all the arguments that were back then. And then we had that meta where the big blind starts to defend 80% against the way to lose button steal. So yeah, all these dynamics that took place over the years are now suddenly a little bit, settling down at least, and coming to approaching the equilibrium direction.
Yeah, and also when we look at the solvers, it's often going to be like, talking about EV in general has not been done enough, like, of course, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because now with the solvers, we see that a lot of the decisions we make, well, they have maybe higher EV in one end, or that the EV is more, that we understand EV more in terms of a overall range strategy that we have, in a certain spot, that we see, okay, it doesn't really matter whether we're betting or checking all that much, but it matters in the perspective of your whole game plan, of your whole strategy, so that people sometimes they beat themselves up. For example, also when you look on river spots, sometimes a call might be exactly break even, so it doesn't even matter what you do. It just matters that you might be exploitable if you always make the folding spot, because then the equilibrium would change, right? So
exactly. Yeah, and also all these leveling stuff was way more a thing back in the days, I think, because there was this argument, this is a spot where it's just about leveling. How does he think, I think? And these days it's more like you have your general game plan, your general strategy that this is top of my range, I have to go with this, or I have the best blockers to make a bluff raise. So it's moving a little bit more into the where you can argue for the plays way better than just guessing.
Let's talk a little bit about the dangers of taking these concepts and applying them wrong. And that is, for example, you mentioned blockers. A lot of people these days say, "Oh, I had a blocker," and then just make a play that's completely not making sense with what their range is in a certain spot. They think that just having straight blockers and PLO is just always going to be able to bluff that hand, but maybe their range just doesn't have enough straights in that spot at the same time, justifying using your blockers that often. So how do you see like the danger? Is there something that in particular that you see out there people using these days?
Yeah, I mean, there's these things like people like to simplify and then tend to oversimplify a little bit too much. Like, as you said, for example, if we have the nut flush blocker, we should bet. And that's pretty much the same that was like 10 years ago, where we said, okay, we are the pre-flop aggressor, we have to see that. So we really have to think about every component of our hand and then decide what's the best play is. For example, we can use the blocker to make a bluff, but we can also use the blocker to be able to check call down a little bit lighter. So it's not that simple, and people, I think, tend to oversimplify and still do, even with the solvers out there.
Yeah, that's one thing. On the other hand, also when you say that you have to think of every component, and it's a training tool, and it can also make you maybe a little bit. We talked about this before, also a little bit make you stressed out in some way. For example, if you know that the solver makes a difference between all these components, and if you know that you should be taking care of every single blocker in a hand, and you should be thinking about your range versus range interaction in that spot, that you could be a little bit too stressed out about your game, and then therefore maybe less enjoy because you know more and you have to perform on a higher level in your eyes because you know so much about what you should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think the main danger of learning things, or it's pretty natural, whenever you learn something, you might start being worse than before because you have learned anything, you have something in your mind now, but you're not really that sure how to apply it at this point in time. And yeah, this is maybe what scares a lot of people also about solvers, as you said. So yeah, you just have to be aware that if you learn something new, you will make mistakes inevitably. And I'm also very easily like if I play a session and I'm unsure in a spot, I tend to quit the session and look it up because I feel uncomfortable in my game, because I think like, I should know this and I have to know this right now, because otherwise I will make the same mistake maybe 5 minutes later, and I have to know it now because otherwise I'm making money. So I think this is also a big danger that's the solver.
Yeah, and I understand that, especially when you're taking a shot at one of the higher limits that you're playing at. For example, if you play PL 500, even some 510, mixing it in there, or just some of the higher games that you're playing, it can make you uncomfortable if you know that a certain spot you might have made a small mistake. But at the same time, I think you have to have the attitude that, yeah, the solvers can help you, but at the same time, you have to be not too harsh on yourself when you make those mistakes. I mean, just knowing that sometimes, you're gonna misapply what you learn from the solver a little bit, and also that, I think the most important thing I learned from the solver is to see tendencies, understand overall concepts, and knowing also that it can hurt. For example, the students that I'm coaching, I try to tell them, look, it doesn't matter whether you're exactly c-betting this hand all the time, because a lot of the c-bets are still going to be mixes, like some 60-40. Also, when you look at PLO visions that you created, you can see some hands that are somewhere in between, and like in no limit hold'em, there's going to be some mixes, except for some hands that go really strongly one way or the other. Like, for example, if you have two backdoor flush draws, it can go strongly one way. But then you just see the overall concept of what is actually good poker, and then you just stick to that mantra and just saying, okay, I'm going to play in a way that I respect that overall concept. Of, for example, saying, okay, for example, a concept could be, I bet 2 pair plus backup in position, put that more in a polarized distribution, and then when I don't have top 2 plus backup, when I have no backup whatsoever, I'm going to use that as a check back. That could be like a concept that you can imply, right? So, okay, top pair, or what? How do you take it? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think exactly the same as you. I think pattern recognition is pretty much the most important thing. Like, what does the nut flush blocker do with the aces here on this board? In the 3-bet pot, for example, is it now a reason to go for the pot, or is it a reason to go for a smaller bet? I think if you understand some of these concepts, that's already helping you so much, and also gaining you so much confidence. You don't have to know exactly now with all the side cards how to play the blocker, but if you know what to do in general, and how this component can help your hand, and understanding these concepts, I think this is pretty much one of the most important things.
And I think there it's also very vital to have repetition in that. Like, for example, you've created this tool, PLO Visions. Maybe you can quickly talk about your daily habits of using that program to make you see those patterns.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much using it after every session to review my hands. So I'm marking the hands while I'm playing, and then I open up PLO Visions, maybe within or in the breaks or after the session, and just to refresh a little bit my mind about how should spot X or Y being played, and not going into too much detail, honestly, just noting, just comparing different categories, like what does the nut flush here, what does the non-nut flush here, what does the backdoor flush draw here, and then that's good. So also check my own play and then think about it. So what can I learn from this now? And what has it to do with the exact components? And then move on to the next hand. So it's a pretty quick learning progress, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds very good. I think that dailiness of just working on your game in some way that benefits you, and you found your way with that program. I think also that one of the reasons that you created a program, basically it helped you to progress with your game. You were looking for something outside of just Monka Solver and going in deeply in those same something that gives you access quickly, and that's what you did with it, right?
Yeah, for me, Monka Solver was pretty much the holy grail of poker. Like when Monka Solver came out, it was like the happiest day of my life, pretty much. I mean, you have to imagine, you always watch those streamers and those coaches playing hands, and I was the one that sits there in front of the screen and taking notes of all the hands they play, like middle position, open raise with ace, king, jack, 5, single suited, and free bet with this hand. I have huge charts of all these information and all this data that I got from watching streamers. And then suddenly you have this Monka Solver where you can, I invested the $1,000 back then to get the preflop solution. And then I opened the preflop solution. Suddenly I see a list of all the hands and how they should be played. And I was just so happy. I really, until the last couple of months, I was pretty much grinding Monka Solver day in, day out, 5 to 10 hours, I would say. So I have easily like 2,000 hours on Monka Solver. And then I thought like it's oftentimes very tough to get the information out of the solutions that you actually want. Because if you open up a simulation in Monka Solver, then you see this huge list of hands, like the checking, the betting small, the betting big, which is not sorted pretty much, and you have to draw your own conclusions. You have to be somewhat definitely educated to understand the output and comprehend it. So I thought like what would be an easy way to now comprehend this huge mess, pretty much. Like there are 10,000s of hands now for a post-flop simulation, for example, and how you should play them. And that was pretty much how I developed Visions. And also, of course, for people who don't have access to Monka Solver, who don't want to spend the money. I mean, you have to pay 500 euros for the software. You have to buy for servers. You have to buy simulations or calculate them on your own. It's all very difficult as well. So
it's pretty much the cost of a server is going to be the same price as you priced PL Visions for the future, which is $99 a month. And I think like that's what the servers cost me for the most part, and sometimes even a little bit more. Just to rent the server, right? It's like the server, and people underestimate it a lot. It's not just the Monka Solver program that you have to buy. You have to have all these, and also sometimes you need coaching by someone telling you how to use Monka Solver, and that costs you extra money as well. Because you can misapply so much of the information you get from Monka and not understand it. So it's very, but to me, it's still, I think we can agree on that the solver really got us to a new level, or at least. I would say it opens up a ceiling. Like the skill cap you can reach is just so much higher. Like you're not immediately a much better player, but you have the opportunity to get to a whole different level if you work the smart way and not work the right way. Is that how I was saying that?
Yeah, exactly. And also the great thing is that you can become a completely autonomous learner, right? I mean, you are not now dependent on someone streaming, on someone telling you what he thinks is the best play, which is also not the most accurate information you can get. So now you have the full responsibility on yourself pretty much. So you can now exploit and go into detail as much as you want. And I think this is very nice for a lot of people.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's also what I try, as I said in my coachings, also to make people completely autonomous at some point, that they think about poker in a certain way, that they can then teach themselves how to go on further with the play, and that they're okay with their decisions, because it's really important to, at the end, to respect also your decisions, even if they were wrong, and to see that, why you made poor decision at some point in poker, and to just be okay with it, because it's just poker at the end. And if you look at some of your opponents, maybe they make like wrong decisions all the time, but they are so happy with their game somehow. And maybe you can also switch the conversation a little bit back from solvers to how other people perceive poker. Like there's this thing in poker where people try to play tough, right? Like people, like, what would you say about that? If a person says, oh, you have to play tough in poker, street poker.
I mean, I'm not sure. Can you go into a little bit more detail?
Well, I think by what they mean is that you have to check raise a lot, which is certainly true also by solver standards, but that, you have to be just aggressive. Like, when you ask people in poker interviews, what do you have to do in poker? Like, you have to be aggressive. Like, solver is not always, like, is pretty aggressive in a lot of situations, but sometimes it's also the correct way to just, check and not make, like, is checking always passive?
Yeah, I got you now. Yeah, I think this is pretty much what we talked about earlier, where we said, like, back in the days, there were like so many winning strategies, and you could really play, how you call it, street poker, to just pressure your opponents off their best hands. But as we already said, these days with solvers, we know that these are just all deviations from the GTO solutions, and every deviation has its counter and its clear counter. And as long as you know the counterplay, all this advice is pretty much not relevant anymore.
Yeah, I think it's completely useless at some point. But here's the thing: some of the people out there, that they know these deviations that are working, and that's really something we have to figure out as well. We have to see, okay, what are actually people doing wrong, so that we can deviate from an equilibrium, and just, for example, bet with an extremely high frequency in some situations, because we can get away with it. If the people, so your question is basically, if your opponents don't know the natural counter strategy to something, then use that strategy. Like, if people...
Exactly, and I think this is exactly how the meta evolved, and this is the reason why we started always with the continuation bet, because people were just not check raising us at the flop unless they had the nuts, so we could easily bet fold every time, and this is a valid strategy also in these days in solver times. So I think we always have to think about what is the meta at the moment, how do people think, and also how does the opponent we are playing or we are facing play, because this is our whole strategy changes up so much. For example, if we have a maniac sitting behind us, I mean, we are changing up our open raising ranges, we are changing up our folding to free betting, we are changing up our four betting ranges, and we are also, if we are in between, calling and slow playing more. So there's just so much that we are now knowing how to counter, that, as you said, the skill cap is pretty much not there is pretty much no skill cap.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you can do so much to still outplay your opponents up to some point, but at the same time, we have things within poker that are not working towards making poker skill game whatsoever. Like, I've talked about this with multiple podcast guys. Like, how do you perceive like what's happening in poker? Are you also on the side of not caring too much and just continuing with what you're doing?
Yeah, pretty much, I would say so. I mean, I think there will always be opportunities, so you always have to look out for what is best for you. I'm a pretty big fan of this, and I think PokerStars, if we are taking calling it by the name, has this big advantage of the Zoom games, and the Zoom games, they are really encouraging, I would say, maybe lazy players, because it's it's definitely a little bit tedious to open up the lobbies and then search for the open seats. There are oftentimes no waiting lists anymore these days on a couple of clients. So this might be just very annoying. And maybe if you're just planning to play half an hour, then you don't really want to waste like 10, 15 minutes to get on your tables in first place. So I think laziness is definitely a huge factor why, for example, PokerStars Zoom is still such a big thing.
Yeah, and also when you look at the other sides, sometimes unethical behavior like seed scripting can obviously be extremely helpful to your bottom line. So does it really, is it going to incentivize us to be, basically exploiting that by using these software aids? And some people certainly do that to just get ahead of the game. That's basically what a lot of people are doing, because it's just helping them. Like, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everyone's own decision. I mean, there are people who scam if they can, and there are people who scam even who don't scam even though they could. So yeah, I think it's just everyone's own decision to make, and yeah, it's pretty much like everywhere in life. You have to make your decisions, but also have to accept the consequences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, you obviously could get banned, and I hope some people get banned for what they're using these days, because it's just getting them an unfair advantage in the game. And in the end, poker for me is still a game that's played between human beings, and I hope it stays that way. And for online poker, at some point you cannot be that sure, right? It's just going to be sometimes you against a player plus the software, whether that's just seed scripting or just even software aid. I don't say like too many players are using that. I think there's still the majority of the games are fair, especially on the major sites. And then at some point, it's just some small aid. Like, for example, let's talk about some HUDs. Like earlier, HUDs were banned like 2 years ago, and people were complaining. And I never understood this. Like, a HUD is something so simple, and everyone could have make use of a HUD, but people were complaining and saying that it was cheating. Like, I couldn't understand those recreationals. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I think definitely the HUD is a necessity these days. So if you're not using it, it's your own fault. So yeah, I mean, there might still be people who don't know that there are HUDs available, and yeah, if you wanna, I think it's a very tough thing to discuss about. I mean, I wouldn't mind if there aren't HUDs, but I also really like HUDs because there are just so much additional edges to be gained. So yeah, I have no clear standpoint on this, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, for me, HUDs I like HUDs to basically work on your game to get better, to see what your opponents are actually doing. Like, you don't see everything, but you see tendencies, and then you can basically think about the hand from an exploitative standpoint. And that also serves your creativity, because in the end, I still want to make not just a decision that Salvo would do, but maybe the decision that I think is going to be best in that spot. And if I just basically play a program, then it's not the same anymore, right? Within poker, for me, it's not the same. So I like having those pieces of information, same as in live poker.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't think that it's a good idea for sites to ban HUDs, because there will always be people, and most likely regulars, who find a way around that, and then they use the HUD, and then you suddenly don't have the chances. I mean, maybe you could also use the HUD, but you know that it would be illegal. But on the other hand, you also know that everyone is using it. So I think this is a very bad situation for the honest player. So I would also allow them in first place as a software.
I would honestly allow them in a sense of just basic stats and make it available for everyone. And I think Run It Once Poker, when they launch, have something implemented it, at least for aggression. Maybe it's going to be slightly misleading just because of general looseness and making those faces. I think that's what they're doing. But at the same time, I think like having everyone with Chivaro or something integrated, like a really simple HUD, would be fine as well. Because at the end of the day, you could do the same as a HUD is doing by pen and paper, right? If you're playing one table, then you wouldn't even need a HUD, because you can take all the information yourself and you're going to take notes on what people are opening. But the HUD is just for multi-tabling, and it's a necessity most of the time for multi-tabling to increase your win rate, especially in tournaments. Like, you're meeting so many players and you just want to know as in tournaments, I think it's so vital. Let's imagine somebody limps from early position. Having 1,000 hands on that person, knowing that this person has limped so many times before, is going to give you the information that I think is only fair. Because, like, yeah, if someone thinks that it's cool if somebody limps for the first time, but you have no hands on that person and it's going to be a trap and you're trying to ISO jam or something. I mean, that is like the hand that makes me mad the most in tournaments. For example, if someone limps at jam 13 bigs, it's completely standard if some of the time he's going to have aces and just limp trap me. But I love it when I have a HUD on that person, seeing that person actually limped for the first time in 1,000 hands. And that person kind of deserves it, in my opinion, to be exploited by me not jamming some hands because of just randomly trying to copy the weak limp of some other player. And in a tournament, in a live tournament, it's different, because there I can look at the person. I can try to make some estimates of who that person is, whether that person is more likely going to limp trap here, or whether that person actually just limps in general, right? So that's actually, for me, live poker is much fairer in that case, because you can see those things. In online poker, you have no idea who this person is. That's why HUD is so much helping me. So that's
yeah. I honestly never thought too much about it, because I usually don't really like to worry about things that I can't influence anyways. I mean, if the site doesn't allow the HUD, then I have to deal with it, right? So I rather adapt or adjust accordingly and not worry too much about is it good, is it bad? But yeah, just get used to it and do the best I can getting so.
Yeah, yes, of course, on sites that you cannot use a HUD anyway, just play without a HUD. But at the same time, HUDs are just, I think, a way to improve your game. So I'm still pro HUD. But I would give everyone a HUD, so everyone has like more or less the same chances of making something out of it. But if everyone banned the HUDs, then I'd be cool with it. It's just another area or another era of poker where we have to get adapt to the situation, which will be fine. It's just some advantage that is lost in some way, but it's okay. So
exactly.
Yeah. How does poker feel these days working with solvers? Did you have a different relationship with poker because of you knowing much more?
For me, it felt way better, because I'm very much a perfectionist. So everything needs to be perfect, as I said, because yeah, I quit sessions if I feel that I could play a hand better and I wanna look it up. So yeah, for me, it's definitely a big help to keep my confidence at a very high level. Because if I have just these notes from other streamers and have to freestyle my own strategy, always these doubts come up, like, am I still good enough? Am I still beating the game? Are other persons getting better than me, or is it just variance? So I think solvers really helped me in this whole keeping my confidence.
Okay, I mean, so for a lot of people, yeah, that is the same, but for a lot of people, it might be also that, knowing that there is this correct place makes you stress that about not following it, because earlier not knowing sometimes could have been much better. Like not knowing that there's actually a better strategy out there, might make sure, some people might say, okay, my strategy is completely fine. Why do I need solver? It's working. Sometimes I have a downswing, but it's fine. You can just keep on playing and don't worry about it. And at some point, maybe you have that bigger downswing where you all of a sudden start questioning yourself that much, which might happen to some players. So do you think that's also valid to see that knowing more can actually be bad for you?
Motivation. Yeah. I think we already talked about this whole learning effect. And I think as long as you learn and improve every day, you are doing fine. If you can say at the end of the day, today I learned this and this, that's already fine, I think. And yeah, this is, you can't know everything. So this is definitely something you also have to always keep in mind these days.
Yep. So do you also, I mean, what is going to be the next one? When you look at the game, do you always, like, you've been playing Pot Limit Oma for how many years? Out of those,
like 8 years.
8 years. Have you ever thought about playing a different poker game or getting out of Pot Limit Omaha?
That was what I actually did before PLO. I pretty much tested out everything. I was starting with No Limit Hold'em, then I switched to double or nothing tournaments even, and yeah, over to Badugi. So I've been playing everything so far. So I pretty much know that PLO is the game I want to play, and also from a theoretical standpoint, I really find it very interesting because of its complexity. So yeah, I'm very happy with playing PLO, and I don't think about changing in the future.
Yeah, for me, PLO was also the first format that I think got to a pretty high level compared to all the other formats. Like in tournament poker, of course, I learned a lot, but I see these days that there will be so much more post-flop room for poker tournaments with different stack sizes. I just recently looked at some solver solution for 100 big blinds stack depth with certain range versus range interactions. I realized in those spots, I'm not playing a good strategy. And I'm very far away from it. Whereas in PLO, at least I've seen a lot of solver solutions pre-flop and flops and turns and rivers, where I now have at least, a reference to look to if I want to play a certain hand. And I can basically solve it for me. So for me, it was also very helpful to have that in PLO. And I don't think I've ever achieved it in any other game. But at the same time, yeah, PLO can also be sometimes a little bit too much at some point.
Yeah, I think that's very understandable. I feel exactly the same. It's very tough oftentimes because there's just no explanation why you are just losing all the time. So yeah, I would say you should prepare in good times for these downswings, and that's what pretty much no one does, right? Because everyone, if they are winning, then everyone is like, yeah, I'm the best, I really learned, and now I I get the reward, so to speak. But no one really thinks about, yeah, okay, this can't go, this can't continue for a lot longer. I have to prepare also for the downswings, and I still have to learn a lot because, yeah, downswings can also have their positives, right? I mean, I'm pretty much, if I'm on a downswing, I'm doing so much theory and I improve my game by so much. So I wouldn't even say that the downswing is necessarily negative. So maybe if you switch your thoughts about those things a little bit, then you will have an easier time to overcome these downswings as well.
Yeah, I agree that studying regardless of how you're running is extremely important, and doing that daily work for becoming better, basically. At the same time, cash game can also be something that, it's always basically the same game. So the progress, you're of course seeing progress also in your win rates and getting better, but also your opponents are getting better. And at some point, the question might arise, okay, what are you really doing? Because sometimes it takes you a lot of hands to also see that visibly. You feel the progress, but at the same time, you don't see as much changing on the short run, especially when you think about money. Up to, I would say, like PLO 100, let's say up to PLO 200, you make some money. You can make 10,000, 20,000, but isn't on the long run like a higher number also fairly important to reach? Because for me, let's talk a little bit about moving up to high stakes, because isn't that really what you should be going for in poker? What is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to think about their priorities in life. I mean, becoming a high stakes player is mentally a very, very tough path to choose. So I don't think that everyone is made for this, because, yeah, I mean, downswings get bigger and bigger in terms of money. So yeah, I don't think that this is for everyone.
Okay, so let's say, so high stakes is not for everyone, but what's the goal then?
I think the goal is to improve, and I mean, for me, the goal was always to understand the game better. I mean, I think I don't speak for a lot of people, but for me, it was always important and always fascinating, all the theory behind PLO. And that's why I enjoy solver so much. And for me, it was always important. Yeah, I have to know why we should do X, Y, Z. And yeah, the results will come from there, and not think too much or pressure myself too much about, yeah, you have to move up now. And you you have to win now basically, but you have to improve and you have to get better every day. That was pretty much all I thought about.
Okay. What if you basically get there, you improved and you're very, very close to the best version of yourself, but you're not at the high stakes yet? Well, I'm not saying that is, for example, my situation. It's totally not. I can still become much, much better. I understand that, and I understand that I have still a long way to go with work on my game. But I think that there might be some players out there who experience this at some point, and they, at least for online poker, maybe also depending on their abilities, right? And then they see that thing that they are not moving up. Like, people think differently. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of self-reflection. Like, is this really the thing I want? Is poker really the thing I want? Am I mentally able to get to the high stakes, or where are my leaks? Because there has to be a reason why you are not getting there. And yeah, I think, as we said with solvers, the skill cap is just endlessly. So I think you can never say like, yeah, I'm here at the max now, because there's always something you can still improve on. So yeah, I think pretty much everyone has the chance to play high stakes if he has the right mindset. But yeah, poker is not only about skill, it's a lot of mindset. And I think this is where a lot of people fail.
Shadow Maniac asked in the chat, what is that you guys don't use Nolan Hold'em solver? He thinks that he figures that it's easier to strategize with less cards. Is it because of so many mixed strategies, or why no Nolan Hold'em solvers for you, for example? Why have you never gone back to No Limit?
Yeah, for me, it was always clear that PLO is the game of my choice, and I honestly never thought about it. Now that you're asking, because for me it was like, yeah, No Limit Hold'em is already way more advanced now, and I don't want to switch back. I mean, why should I switch back if I'm at a pretty high level at PLO, still not where I want, but on a pretty good path? I mean, it would be kind of counterintuitive for me to go now back to No Limit and start from pretty much the beginning there, if the potential for me in PLO is way higher.
And for me, it's maybe a bit different. I don't think of myself just as a PLO player, or I play poker. I'm not even a poker player per se. Like, I'm poker player. Playing poker is just something I do. And I could, I actually learned a lot from PLO solvers for No Limit Hold'em, because I basically ran simulations based on the same spots and looking at No Limit Hold'em solutions, see what is actually happening there with the solver. And I think my understanding of Omaha, my understanding of Hold'em has helped both games. I think a lot of people, they just come up with these, you get confused with one game for the other game. I don't think that's necessarily true. If you take your time, slow down, and just look at the solutions that you're facing and think about what it really means, trying to understand deeply what's happening with the solver solutions, and then trying to apply that. And then sure, applying that in real games and then, playing accordingly is not easy. It's going to be extremely tough. But at the same point, it's certainly going to be a more competitive strategy in No Limit Hold'em that I'm playing these days, thanks to the solvers that I'm using in Pot Limit Omaha, because I just realized that some things that I used to be doing in No Limit weren't good at all, and I benefited a lot from PLO. And I think it's a fair point for Shady Money to point it out. And he's also saying that when you're trying to improve your poker, or your goal to reach a level to live a comfortable life, or challenging one where you are up against the best players in the world. Yeah, I think that's a personal goal. Like, for me, it was always to move up to the high stakes. I realized that one of my stress factors was both that I am not playing the players that I would want to play, because I know that players I would want to play might, on the short term or even midterm, cost me some money, right? So that was quite a stress factor for me, because I think with like a 8 to 10 big blinds per 100 on some of the stakes that I'm playing, or 7 to 10 big blinds per 100, I end up playing people that are exactly that frame worse than me. And sure, there's going to be some players that are better in the player pool, but like the general tendency is that you're always playing people who are worse than you. That is a big problem, and that's why I also try to challenge myself to play more PLO 500, more maybe tougher PLO 200 lineups to just make sure that even though I might be losing in those games some of the time, I will improve. How is that for you?
Yeah, that sounds very, very reasonable.
Okay, do you sometimes, like at what limit do you think, or do you sometimes jump into player pools where we think you might be losing?
Yes, I actually did. I think this, but it's not a reasonable decision. It's just more an ego thing, right?
Why not? Ego. Why that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that you're a good player, then you also wanna test it out, right? You wanna compete against the other players and figure it out. How are your chances in these player pools, and also that you get recognized by them, that you show them, yeah, I'm moving up here too. So take care. I'm also a strong player now. I think that this is a lot of the reasons why I tend to play on really bad player setups. For example, PLO 500 Zoom, I used to jump into pretty much any pool just because I thought they're, yeah. I mean, from a theoretical standpoint, I have to say it will be very tough to outwork me, because spending 10 hours per day, or maybe not 10, but 5 to 10 hours every day in Monkosova, I'm not sure if any one of these PLO 500 Zoom players is doing it. So I'm getting a little bit cocky at times and think like, yeah, I mean, show me how you want to beat me. And yeah, I think this is a very bad, of course, a very bad attitude, but sometimes it just gets me.
Well, the thing is, even if you say that you might play unexploitably on some level, they don't even have to beat you. The rake is going to do that for you partially. Like you have to beat them, and not just by, yeah, you have to beat them by more than just a little bit, right? That's a bit also my take on things. So I think without exploiting them on a really good level, I have no business playing tougher PLO 500 lineups, because not only is there a risk that I'm breaking even or before the rake, but after the rake, I'll be losing at like -3 big blinds per 100 or maybe -4 or whatever. So that is certainly a risk that's out there. But you're right, so there's still going to be plenty of fish in those player pools, and you're going to win against them with a pretty high win rate, given also the lower rake on those stakes. For me, it wasn't even just an ego thing. For me, it's just not entertaining enough anymore to stay on the same level, because I realized these players are not even playing the same game anymore. Like when you look at PLO 50, PLO 100, like some of those players play the same game pre-flop, right? They're going to have all these ranges that are out there from Monker Solver, but it's, first of all, the rake is going to be also slightly higher on these levels. And at the same time, you don't get, I realized, for example, I played 200 hands of PLO 500 or like a very short session, and I realized I got put into so many other situations, and my interest level was so much higher playing that game that I could look up so many more hands afterwards. But when I play PLO 100, I'm like, I'm not even that interested anymore. I realize that my level of interest goes down a lot by the stakes. Like it depends.
Yeah, that was exactly the same feeling I had when I first shot at PLO 500. I mean, I was also streaming it, and it was really exciting. I mean, I was very nervous to start with, and I was really top focused. Like I was really playing A+ game, and I was doing fine then. And yeah, this showed me that you have a chance there. So keep going. It's working out.
Yeah, I think it's a much, even though it's sometimes a bit scary, especially when you look at, for example, live high stakes, it might be the same thing, It's super unreasonable to think that any or too many 25, 50 games wouldn't be beatable for someone who's worked online. So I thought, why not just hop in those games and take some shots? Because how is it even possible that a live poker player has done so much work? Like they have done different kind of work on live poker specifically, and how to exploit some of the live poker players that are out there. But at the same time, I don't see how you cannot just hop into those games and be a winning player in there. So I'm going to continuously try to do that and play some bigger games out there, because what's going to happen?
Yeah, but that's only true if you're just seeing the big blinds in front of you and not the actual money. Because if you're playing money scared, that's pretty dangerous too. That
Yeah,
you
of course.
suddenly turn out to be the fish, and then you're playing high stakes with being the the insecure player. And yeah, this could also
Yeah, of course.
lead.
If I notice, and I think I can be enough self-honest towards myself that will be the case, then it's different. You have to absolutely not relate to the money, but just to the big ones. And I think, especially in PLO, sometimes it might be even easier to do so for various reasons, because it's just such an equity-driven game, and also you can basically calibrate your pre-flop ranges in a way that it's an easier game to play, I would say. But yeah, you're right. If you end up playing those games and you don't see just the big ones but the money at stakes, then that would be completely wrong. I agree. Like that, but then that would be an edge that your opponents gain over you mentally, and of course you have to make sure that that's not happening at all. But yeah, I think that is something that I've thought about in the last time, and I just wanted to have your take on it. Like, what's the long-term plan? What comes after PLO 500? Because yeah, you might win $100 an hour, 150. I don't know. And then what? Do you keep on grinding?
I haven't really thought about this because my situation now changed so much in the direction of content creation. Also because I was really always very nervous and stressed when I played these PLO 500 Zoom games. And I thought, like, is this really what I want to do? And I also already told you, I'm always getting back after a couple of hands, hitting up the solver, looking up hands. And yeah, this is pretty much what I did. I said I have so many hours locked in Monka solver that I really thought about it. And yeah, playing poker, there were always some excuses for me not to. There were always things to do that were more urgent besides poker. So I thought, like, yeah, why not just go into the content creation more, where you are really enjoying what you're doing, where you really can put in those 10 hours, 12-hour days without any excuses. So yeah, for me, the goal is not anymore to grind the high stakes, because yeah, I just feel it's not for me. I can't really deal with the downswings. I can't really deal. As I said, I mean, I have these ego problems I mentioned before, so I lose the rationality when it comes to game selection. So I thought, like, yeah, there are also other ways, and I really enjoy the theory behind poker. So why not going more into this direction? I mean, this is also a fine thing to do.
I think stress is such an interesting topic to talk about. Also on the highest stakes. I think that there's tons of people out there who deal with stress on mid stakes, on high stakes. I think the higher you move in stakes, the more stress you got to experience, right? Because it's going to be for sometimes a very large portion of your bankroll or of whatever you have to your name, and then that can cause so much stress in you. Is it really did you find out the reasons why that is stress? Is it because of, to me, it sounds like your stress is related to not making the right decision, not just the money.
I wouldn't say so. I think it's mainly about the money, because I really feel like the higher I play, the more stress I experience. So yeah, it's definitely correlated to this. So I'm not sure. How about you? Because you said you're shooting the live high stake games, and this is also what I couldn't really do, because I think I would just stress out too much and always never see the big blinds in front of me, but rather the real money. And so yeah, how is your approach on this?
Well, my approach is to start meditating, and I'm finding other ways. Like I'm now Googling things like how to reduce stress levels besides meditation. Like, it's just awareness of what's happening, slowing down. And then meditation, which is all like a form of doing that exactly. And it's very difficult to establish, doing that. And that's something I deal with, because I think the one thing that kept me back from moving to high stakes, or establishing myself in that is stress. Because let's say you had less stress, then you can play more hours, because one of the things that, as you say, keeps you back from playing more hours, keeps you playing longer sessions, is then being stressed and having to run for the solver solution and seeing whether you made the right decision. That is a description of stress. So if you want to break that pattern of being too stressed about it and moving up, I think, yeah, you have to find out a solution to that. And I actually haven't found it yet. For example, a lot of also the people I teach at the lower stakes, I tell them, look, this is not even for that big of money yet. Maybe it is to you, but think in the big picture. Like now, there's no reason to be stressed about losing 5 buy-ins at 5 cent, 10 cent, or even lower than that. It's not worth it because it's not even long-term big money, right? It's time to, and of course, most people that I coach, and also they need to also work much harder still on their game to get to my mid stakes level, or and then you have so many other things to worry about than the money, or being stressed about the downswing because you're not even at the mid stakes yet. You know, that's what I tell the micro stakes players, because yeah, you're not even at the mid stakes yet, but why are you so stressed out about losing or about losing money? Because it's not even money. Like, it is money, but it's so little money, it doesn't, to me, it's, but then I could also be pointed out as a hypocrite because, yeah, you're stressed out about the high stakes, about the money too. Why do you have the same problem? Well, because it's a lot more money, right? And because it's, yeah, because I'm not stressing about the money because I can win that back on mid stakes. I'm stressing about the denial of me being, or not denial, but if I lose money at the high stakes, I can no longer play that game. That's what I stress out about, right? If a micro stakes player stresses out about, playing on a micro stakes, well, just make some money somewhere else in a job, and you're back in the game. You're back in the game immediately. That's no problem. If you're on the micro stakes and you lose 5 buy-ins, no big deal. Get some money elsewhere, you're back in the game. If you're losing 5 buy-ins at the high stakes, let's say, to me, that would be something a line of $10,000, right? Or if I play deep, then it's $20,000. Well, guess what? I still have a bankroll, but it sucks. Like, I cannot do that like 10 times, right? I cannot just go and make this happen and then I'm back in the game in high stakes. Like, that's a bit of a thing at those limits. That is also keeping people from entering, I guess. And people push the variance by putting in straddles up to 80 or sometimes, and then it's as a huge swing or a huge variance fest. So that is pot limit Oma. You know, if you're lucky in pot limit Oma, you sit down at the high stakes and you just win right away. And then you go on this huge upswing, and because you're maybe a small winning player, you never look back. That's what you want to happen in pot limit Oma, and unfortunately, that happens to me somewhere in the next 2 years. That I just go on an upswing and I never look back. That's basically the goal. And then when it comes to the stress, honestly, like, I am not in no position to give I can give some advice to micro stakes players, because I think you can just rationalize. That's one of the ways to maybe reduce stress. Rationalize. It's not the best form, but it's some form. And then, the next step is, I guess, to do meditation or do some practices that reduce your stress. But it's certainly, yeah. Do you have anything that you thought about? Like, you say that you're become a content producer, like doing something different is reducing your stress, doing what makes you less stressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we are dealing with when getting stressed is actually just events, just random events happening after each other. And what I learned is that pretty much an event itself has no meaning at all. Like, there is nothing positive or negative about the sun shining, right? I mean, one might say, yeah, it's awesome, the sun is shining. And maybe if the whole week was already 40 degrees Celsius, you might be like, oh, the sun is shining. When does it rain again? So yeah, it's all about yourself and how you deal with these events that happen. So you can always think positive about something, and you can always think negative about something. So that's also the reason why, if I, for example, would lose 10 buy-ins, I'm stressed and I'm negative. But maybe someone else who has a better mindset loses the same hands, the same 10 buy-ins, and plays the A game, because they know that this doesn't mean anything. They played the best. They just focus on the input, and not on the outcome. So I think this is pretty much what you should learn. And it sounds so easy when you say it, but if you're actually practicing it, and if you're actually experiencing getting shut down 10 buy-ins within, I don't know, 10 minutes, yeah, then it really feels bad, and you really have to rationalize it that it's actually just an event and it has no meaning. I mean, I could insult you now, I could say feel bad now, and you wouldn't do, right? Because there is no context, and there is no, it's just your own. You yourself can decide whether you feel good or bad. But if I tell it to you now, feel bad, you wouldn't, right? And if maybe a family member said it to you, then yeah, chances are higher that you would. But in the end, it's up to you whether you feel bad or good about some events that happen.
Yeah, and for me also learning that sure, you're the master of your own brain, right? You can influence your brain, but at the same time, it sounds so easy on the surface, and you just. But also the rationalization. Sometimes you at some points there's an end to it. Like you cannot just rationalize everything. You have to. I think sometimes it's about practicing something about, and I think maybe meditation will help me personally. Because it's a practice. It's not just me reading a book, because just reading a book, just reading about it, just listening to someone about it, sometimes it can light a spark. And it's also what I hoped with my content production, that I can tell people, for example, now with a question in the chat, I see, I lose $200 Shadow Maniac, like, it took you so much time. Well, maybe it's also the responsibility to take. Yeah, you invested that time into poker for a good reason, right? You did play poker because you thought at the time that it was the best thing to do with your time. If it wasn't, then that was a mistake, right? But when you're playing Palo, yeah, you sign up for that. And sure, I do the same when I take a high stakes shot, but at the same time, you also have to ask, okay, how did you lose the 7 buy-ins? How did you lose those $200? Did you play your best? Did you post the hands afterwards? I'm sure you did, because you're active on multiple channels. But did you try to sort out whether everything that you did was basically fine? And did you keep on improving despite losing the 7 buy-ins? Did you keep on working on your game? And also ask yourself, okay, what is your effort that you put in? And it takes a lot of effort, in my opinion, these days to get really good at poker. With the industry being tougher, I think the bar has been raised to where only 5% are winning. So if you're not the top 5% player, then you're not winning. And sometimes in some games, it's even less than 5% on the micros because of the rake trap.
Yeah. I think it's a lot about preparation. As you said, meditation is definitely a way to prepare for those bad times, as we said in the beginning, right? I mean, there will be upswings as well, so we should use this time to prepare for the next downswing, as we already said. So yeah, it sounds easy, but that's pretty much how it works, right?
Yeah, it's just still tough. And I think sometimes the solution is to also look outside of poker. There's this one video that I've seen that talks about your life, and like you're on a table, right? And you have those multiple feats on the table. And if you break 3 of them and poker is your 4th one, well, guess what? If poker is not going well, or like 3 are already not enough for a table, like it will break down already. You're putting, like, always ask yourself what's going on in other areas than poker. And if you define your day or your day's success just with poker, because if you do and it's going wrong and you feel like you're wasting your time losing 7 buy-ins on micro stakes, well, you need other legs of your table.
Yeah, that's totally right. But yeah, you have to also be careful to not chase 2 rabbits, because then you will catch neither one. But yeah, I would also say, I mean, there's this book here. It's The One Thing. I'm not sure if you read it, by Gary Keller. I think it's pretty amazing, as pretty much saying that you should only focus on one thing at a time for each area. Like, focus on what's the most important thing regarding your health at the moment, and then do this. What's the most important thing regarding your finances, then do it. But not focus on too many things. And I think that's a very, very good thing to learn. Also, when it comes to reading books, I mean, I'm not sure, what's your favorite book, and how long did it take you to read it, for example?
I don't really have a favorite book, but I like multiple sources. But I think similar to The One Thing, they can be contradictory in one way. I do some reading of a book called, it's a child in you which talks about your belief system and that you inherited from your parents. That book is one of my recent books that I find fascinating, because like right now I'm studying my belief system a bit more, and I try to understand how I can override my belief system, some of the negative aspects, so that I believe, subconsciously, not just in myself, but in everything I do. And everyone has that, where your belief system has some flaws in it. And I do listen to some beats before going to bed, to just trying to override that belief system. I am just going to talk out and see how that works. Because I realized, I have some belief systems that I have from my parents, and I realized that my parents are not, for example, I have my mother raised me, and she taught me so many great things. She was a teacher, and at the same time, I realized that some of her risk awareness, or she is not a big risk taker. And I realized that in my path, in my career, I have to be taking risks. And I realized that that is one of my weaknesses in my belief system, taking risks. So I have to override that, because otherwise I'm never going to get my shit together and take like a super big risk, whether that is in poker or, in outside of poker. It can be in social media, making like another YouTube channel, for example. I now want to start a second YouTube channel where I talk a lot about other things, about psychological aspects, not of just poker, but in general, because I think I learned so much about it. I want to share with the world. And, you might think, oh, well, this is risky because nobody might watch it. But at the same time, I feel like, no, it's time to, start a podcast, put yourself out there, produce content for people to watch, and see how you can get better. And just believe in yourself and say, okay, you have all that background that you can do it. And that taking risks thing is a huge thing. So that's one of my favorite books. What's yours?
My favorite book is a German book. I don't think there's an English version of it. It's called Grenzenlos Erfolgreich by Julian Hosp. This is one of the greatest books. And also the One Thing I showed you is a great book. And the other book I read is Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I felt like I made a lot of mistakes when reading books, because I was like, I'm not sure, how long do you need to, or does it take you to read a book?
Well, quite some time.
If it's a good one.
Yeah, I'm actually taking quite some time for it. It takes me quite a while. And sometimes I put it aside for a month, and then I just read the rest of it. Sometimes it takes me, I can read it in a day or two. Depends on the book.
Yeah, and I think that's generally a very good attitude to have, because this Rich Dad Poor Dad book, it was so good. And I was so happy that I finished it within 2 days. I was like, this was the best book I've ever read. And it helped me so much. But then if I told my parents and my friends about it, it was like, so what's it about? And then you're suddenly realizing that you're not really fully understood and learned what you actually were reading. Because I think this is something that society also teaches us, that if there is a good book, a good novel, then you read it within 1 day, and even if it's 800 pages. And then this is a very good book. But I realized that if it's a really good book, then it will take you a very long time to finish it, because there will be just so many things to pick up, and you have to also do it and execute what you learn, right? Because otherwise I mean, there's this saying that knowledge is power, but in my opinion, knowledge is not power. It's just potential power, right? I mean, you can know everything, but if you're not doing anything with it, then it's just worthless. And that's why I started to read books. Like I started reading it, and as soon as I pick up the first idea, I take it aside and I try to implement it. I've tried to think about how can I implement this for my life. And that's why I might just read like 5 minutes a day, because I already figured out something and I want to try to implement it into my daily schedule.
I think that's some very good advice right there. I think, reading something and then trying to implement it and make it really your thing. And I think I do that for the book that I read, about your belief system. I try really to implement it, really to work on my belief system, because I realize like just knowing that my belief system on some level sucks. Now, I'm not saying like a lot of it is good, but then there's something bad about it that I have to somehow fix. But it's not going to help if I just read books about it. I have to then go ahead and ask myself, okay, what is my practice to override the belief system? And that can take a year sometimes, or maybe maybe just 2-3 months. But I don't know how long it's going to take. But I certainly do want to work on it. And I realize that self-development as a poker player is going to be pretty big. Like, I'm not saying like in the chat we already have some people, if you play at the highest stakes, they're going to be fish. Yeah, of course. Especially when you run good at first, it's going to be easy. So you can just go on your infinite heater and just keep on playing. If you win at first, what if you don't? Then you have to take it. And that's the hard part about poker in general. You have to take those shortcomings the right way so that you keep on going at it and keep on playing as high as you can and keep on doing your best. And that's not
and what if it works out for like 2 years, let's say? What if you're going on a heater for 2 years and you're playing the high stakes and then suddenly it's over? I mean, I think that's a way worse situation to be in than if you are having a hard time starting out in first place.
Well, I think under one circumstance, and that is if you're not a true winner, that would be the worst. Like there's
exactly. I was talking about getting on a huge heater, thinking you're the best without doing too much, and then suddenly everyone gets above you and you're not realizing it because the outcome told you that you were winning. So
that's horrible. I actually know some cases that happen. It's just obvious that at some point they're going to have to get out of poker because they were delusional about their skill set. They won in live poker, especially. They won a lot in live poker on this short time frame of hands. And then all of a sudden they had to realize that they're actually not all that good and they have to quit, or they lost all their bankroll again. And it happens to a lot of people, and it used to happen to a lot of people who won even huge sums in live poker. Non-live poker, the same thing, but I think it happens less and less because of the also converging skill sets of people. Also, that's another 2-year heater. That happens, man. That happens. How does the increasing average skill level of poker player affect the pro versus fish relationship? Well, we can talk a little bit about pro versus fish. That's an interesting topic too, especially in live poker. To me, it's like as a professional player, you want to cater a little bit to the recreational player, and you want to make him feel welcome in the game, and just try to keep a friendly atmosphere. But at the same time, I don't think you have to do everything humanly possible that the fish plays with you. Like some people, they think they can act as if the fish is or the recreational player who's losing money is stupid. Because here's the thing: a lot of people that are losing at poker, they're not stupid. They're smart people, but they're not just poker smart. That's it. They exactly know what's going on. They know exactly that you want to win their money. They're not stupid. Okay. And a lot of professional players, they pretend that this guy is super stupid and they just sit down to take their money. And that's just an unhealthy attitude, and it's just hurting the game so much.
I totally agree. I can't add anything.
Okay. So that's just what you want to avoid. You want to be just a normal human being. You sit down with a table. When I play live poker, I love to talk about non-poker things and sometimes even about content creation. I try to not do that too much, but I occasionally will do that because it's just what, talking about YouTube is I think a lot about it, and I talk with players about it. And I also, thought about, why would I mention that I'm a poker coach to people? That might scare them off. Well, whatever, they're not stupid. They're going to notice right away that or a lot of people of my opponents will notice that I'm playing for a living, or that I'm at least making money playing this game. And I'm not going to make a huge deal about it. Like, that's my take on it. A lot of people, they try to hide and they try to act as if they're super recreational and actually losing at the game. I'm not going to try to pretend of being anyone in the cash games. And I think a lot of people don't mind. A lot of people that have been losing against me in live poker, they don't even mind losing in some way, especially in Vegas. Whatever. It's just as long as you don't treat them poorly or make them feel bad about themselves and humiliate them for like their bad play or berate them on some level, it's all fine. And I think that's just my attitude.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree. And as you said, I mean, those people are not dumb. I mean, somewhere they have to make to be making all this money, right? So, and most likely they are searching the challenge, right? They want to play against professionals. They want to show them, or they want to take a look at how good they are in comparison to them, and they don't care if they getting crushed by a professional. It's fine.
Yes, as long as you don't, piss them off about something. I have the same experience. They like playing against certain people. If you look at, for example, a guy like Ronnie Kaiser, he continuously wins in the highest games, and nobody cares. Like, everyone wants to play with him because he's good action. Like, it's phenomenal to be in his position, but he worked hard for it, and he worked on his skill set to get there, basically. And that's a very interesting thing about live poker, I would say. So maybe also the question was more about, okay, do you play the same way against rich, high stakes people? Well, sometimes you have to give them a little bit more action. Sometimes you have to play a little bit looser, not just fold every hand. That's sometimes a prerequisite to play against them, which is not always easy because you know all these charts, and you're probably going to end up with 25 to 30% VPI. Like, it's not even that much lower, right? You play like every third hand or every fourth hand, somewhere in between there. But they play every second hand or 3 out of 4 hands, and it feels that you're so tight, especially when you got that streak of not getting any hands. That's maybe a little bit different, but that's also just some tips for live poker. I actually will have a live poker series, guys. So on YouTube, there will be a live poker series that I plan for next year, where I talk about live poker and some tips and tricks and how to make it in that scene. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I want to go a little bit back about also the books. Like, the one thing, I think a lot of advice out there is also one-dimensional. So the one thing for me is a little bit one-dimensional, because I know I talked to Jane Anders or Fernando about it, and he's always been like this one thing. You have to do one thing. But at the same time, I know we've had conversations where we talked about your more pillars that you have in your life, and that you want to make sure that you do well in more areas than just poker, in your relationships, friends and family, that you stay in shape. It's not that you try to become, for example, a bodybuilder and a world-class poker player at the same time. Like, if you did that, that would be a problem, right? If you try to push both. But what if you just kept on healthy while you're playing poker? There still has to be room for that, in my opinion. Like, how do you think about that one-dimensional advice of doing one thing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's very interesting because a lot of people talk about this. Yeah, let's generate multiple income streams, right? This is pretty much the same. Like, a lot of wealthy people say, yeah, you have to, if one thing doesn't work out, you have to get in some money from elsewhere. So yeah, this is also a very controversial topic, I think. But in my opinion, it's important that you start being good at one thing and generate this basic income. And then from there, if you have this, then you can go and diversify and build up several more income streams. And yeah, I think you should always at least take care about your health, because if your health is bad, then you won't be successful. It's just how it is. So always health first. And if you feel that you are eating healthy, that you're feeling healthy, that you have a lot of energy, then I would say, yeah, let's really focus on one topic first. Let's go all in on learning PLO, for example. I mean, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And then if you are becoming very good at one thing, then maybe add in the next thing. And yeah, I would say go from there. Start out with getting good at one thing and then proceed from there. What's your take on that?
For me, it's a very good example that you mentioned, that multiple income stream, because I listen to so many content creators out there and listen to their advice, and I see that thing as well. Like, the multiple income stream, it's, yeah, they give you advice from their perspective. They are on a different area in life, or they're in a different period of their life where they can actually afford doing what they're doing. But when they started, they were in different situations, and they sometimes just started with one thing doing it really well until it is basically self-sufficient and it is working, and then they add on the next thing. I think very few people just do like 8 things at the same time and build like multiple income streams.
Yeah, exactly. This was the same idea I had. Like I could play a little bit of poker. I could do a little bit of coaching on the side. I could produce a little bit of content. I could code a little bit on the side. So I have like, if something is not working out, I have still like 3 things left, right? But in the end, it's like, yeah, you're getting nowhere. You are not getting being a good poker player. You are not getting your app to somewhere. You're not producing high quality content. You just can't. I mean, you're not going to a doctor that tells you, yeah, by the way, I'm also a great cook, so or something else. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, if someone tells you like an a car mechanic that he can also do the surgeries for you, then you are thinking like, okay, what the hell is this guy talking about? So yeah, I think you really have to start first becoming very good at one thing and then move to the next one. And I also recognize this now. You can really get a lot of things done if you are really working on it and working eccentrically on it. So for example, if I now start to code 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, I can get a lot of things done within a month, within 2 months. But I think short-term thinking is oftentimes where people lose their motivation. Like, I want to lose weight, so yeah, I worked out for 3 days in a row, but I can't feel any difference because they're only seeing the short-term results. And I think this is also something that poker really learns you or teaches you to think a little bit more long-termish, right?
Yeah, I mean, the results orientedness of people, inside of the poker world and outside of poker world is just hilarious. And as a poker player, with a poker player's mindset, you see it more clearly that people are so results oriented with their lives and just never think about the long run and what they could actually accomplish if they stick with to something. And I think losing weight is exactly that. Also, you can read on weight and see, okay, you might be a person that is only going to be in this frame or in this interval of a weight, right? You're actually, with your genetics, which I didn't believe in like some years ago, but now, yes, genetics will influence your weight, but you can still reach the best version of your interval. Like, you're not doomed to be a super obese person, right? You can still be okay, like, yeah, at the lower end or at your perfect best. So you're just trying to, see your shortcomings and say, okay, you're not going to be ever that, perfect version body type wise that you see on the internet, but you say, look, I can be the best version of myself, and that's much better than I'm now, right? And then that's like the first thing that you read about, and then it takes daily practice. And I think that the mindset, the results are in this, these things are so underestimated in people that I think there's a big market around it, and there's something that you as a poker player's mind can change. And that's also why I want to make that second YouTube channel, because I think poker players have a unique approach to how they see things in life, and they can help other people if they're at a high level with their thought process to reach their goals better. And that's what I want to do as well. And I still play poker a bunch, but I've moved a little bit on also to doing something else. Like, I don't think I'm trying to do multiple things at the time anymore necessarily. Sure, I'm still trying to move up in poker or establish myself at the high stakes, but I'm not going to make everything about that, which is going to make the progress slower, but it's also going to make me happier if I can, produce all these other things and just do what I want to do with my life as well. Because long term, I know that I want to do something in the, mentally, helping people mentally with some of the issues that they're facing. Because I've also struggled with it myself, right? And there's one thing that I learned also from Tony Robbins is he said, like, yeah, if you struggle with something yourself quite a bit, then at some points, if you overcome those struggles, you can help other people without it, and it becomes also believable. How do you think is that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see how that applies to what I'm doing now in the future with these different channels and trying to produce content. It's certainly going to be tough. Like, I'm going to realize, yeah, I don't want to be too results oriented at first, because it's gonna take quite some time until I establish myself also as a, with my main channel then, or with my other channel or mainstream channel, which I want to start. So yeah, that's not going to be easy, and I'm going to have to go through some periods where I'm going to stagnate, and I don't want to blame it then on the one thing, one dimensional thing that, that, yeah, I'm still playing poker and I'm still doing that. No, I mean, I should believe in myself to have a lot of capacity and do some multiple things, but then also put the focus maybe on that new thing, because it takes so much of my space, right? Because if
you shouldn't definitely think about yourself as being a one-trick pony. Like, just because you spent the last years with playing poker doesn't mean you can't do anything else. It doesn't mean that you can't become a great podcaster, or you can't become, like it was for myself, the whole studying, the whole time I was studying, I really sucked at programming. So some people, I could have said, no, I can't code an app because I suck at programming. And this would be pretty much the easy route. But if you think like you can learn really pretty much anything, right? You don't have to narrow yourself too much down, right? Because you can learn so much. You can, as I said, learn pretty much anything. And yeah, that's also what I thought about that. Yeah, why am I not good at coding? Because I just didn't do it as much as the other guys, because I was maybe playing too much poker while the other guys were coding. So yeah, there's always a reason. And yeah, you shouldn't really narrow yourself down to, yeah, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I can't do this, because you can just put time into it and learn it and put in effort, and you will be able to do it. And I think a lot of it also comes down from back to your education, right? I mean, when you're a child, then you're trying out everything, and you just get shut down a lot by other people, being it your parents, that they say you can't sing, or being the teachers in school that they say you can't draw, and your whole potential gets smaller and smaller, and you always believe it because those are people of authority. And yeah, if they tell you can't sing, then you're not trying it anymore, because yeah, they told you tried it and that's it. But yeah, you should think a little bit more about why that is. I mean, maybe you just didn't do it enough, right?
Singing is a perfect example. It's funny, but I was actually in a school band when I was like 12 to 14, and I mean, I wasn't singing there, but I think I was okay back then. But then still some people told me, you can't sing. And then it's like, okay, who do you believe? You believe the parents? And it's just a thing like, yeah, if you tell yourself that, of course, you're not going to do anything with it, right? And singing is really something, yeah, if you unless you practice it for a really long time, you are not going to reach the best version of yourself that soon. And yeah, it's not going to sound good, right? And but I think that mindset, that is still around a lot. And I think singing is one of the perfect examples, because people really think in black and white. You say either you can sing or you can't sing. And sure, some people that they have a better cap to their abilities. They're gonna reach, like, some people are never gonna be, world-class singers, I guess. Like, and some people they will naturally start at a very high level, and then they can come to a world-class level in that regard, right? And that's like, yeah, you're gifted in some way. But I love his name is, I think, Seligman. He's a researcher. What is his full name?
Is it Thinking Fast and Slow?
Yeah, it could be. I have it on multiple of my
authors. This is Kahneman, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure. I also know this name. Yeah.
Yeah, Seligman, he talks about that every skill that you have, or even your weight that I described, is within a range. Also, your overall happiness in life is within a range. He said that you can be born as a person that's more likely going to be moody, not so happy, but you have a range. You're always within that range, and you just have to strive for being at the top of your range.
Yeah, okay.
It's really funny in a poker concept. Like, yeah, just make the best out of that range that you're in. There's some predestination happening to us in all areas. but we can always reach the best of that, right? Like,
So, yeah.
for example, for basketball, if like I could never be a top basketball player, but I could become pretty good, right? I could become really, really good at it. I could just never play in the NBA. However, could become good, and my range is, never going to be as the top players. I cannot reach that, but at the same time, I become good at it and have fun playing it, and outplay a lot of people that are taller than me.
Yeah.
But I would have to do much more, and it would be frustrating. But maybe maybe it will make me happy if I played reasonably well. Same goes for every skill that you have in life, and you should also not believe, of course, that your range is going to be on the lower end, because that's already capping yourself. But you have that predestination thing, and then you can reach your potential. That's just what you strive for. And who knows what your potential is? Just go for it, and then just try to bet. And the chances are that if you go for your best potential, that's actually worth something. That's actually either making money indirectly or directly. For example, in poker, if you go to your best version, maybe that's not like Sauce or someone, but maybe it's going to be somewhere that's making you a lot of money. And I for sure, I think almost every person can become a successful player within poker at some point in their career, if they reach their best potential, of course.
Absolutely.
Let's see, with the chat, we got some questions about the tournaments. Well, when it comes to tournaments, man, you say you're getting in often good and then losing. Well, that's just short-term variance. That's not much. If you want to know how to improve your micro stakes, no limit hold'em tournament skill set, it's very, very simple. You're going to have to perfect your shoving ranges at 10 big blinds. You're going to have to start implementing raise folds at 15 big blinds stack depth, and raise calls and then jamming ranges. At 20 big blinds, you might even start to 3-bet fold some people. But for every stack depth, you're working out your ranges and try to update them with poker courses out there. Maybe get a coach that can teach you about the ranges that you should be playing. And then post-flop, you're going to run those ranges against each other from every position, or against the ranges that you assume your opponent is playing. And then you study range versus range interaction and try to see, like, for example, Rulaz and I about PLO, you try to understand overall patterns about the game with those range versus range interactions. And then you're going to be already a pretty damn good player at No Limit Hold'em Micro Stakes tournament. And then you just grind it out. And that's going to be fully enough. If you do that, as best to your abilities, and just put all in on that, you're going to be successful playing 10,000 micro stakes tournaments. I would at least play 10,000 tournaments. That's my take on it. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's very reasonable. And yeah, just always think about that you are the fish and not the other ones. If you have this mentality that you should be winning, then that's already a pretty bad precondition, I would say.
Yeah, and then Johan also mentioned there's a variance calculator on the internet. It's called pokerdope.com. It's also multiple of my videos somewhere on my YouTube channel. Like, just watch some of my videos, and then you're going to find how I talk about variance and how you use that calculator, just to give you some sense. And I think the note of Matthias here is really, your note is really good, that you think that you can still improve. You're still a fish, and that's true. Because if you're playing at micro stakes and you haven't crushed it yet, you're probably still fishy in a lot of areas. Like, I'm fishing still a lot of tournament areas, even though I coach people about tournaments. But I realize, all the time, studying range versus range interaction, that some of the spots I've played horribly wrong, and I could do so much more by implementing new bet sizes, by just perfect, getting my strategy much better. And it was so far from equilibrium, I couldn't even tell at some point, right?
Yeah, I think being humble about your skills is definitely very important. I mean, just look at ICM. I mean, who truly understands ICM interactions with your open raising range, with your sizings, with your free betting, and so on and so on? I mean, especially also in PLO, it's just pretty much, no one can really say that he is an expert in it, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think most people that you see in the poker industry that are much better than us two here, you still hear them say that they're actually not that good, right? That's really weird, hearing them say that. but I heard so many people in interviews that are high stakes players that they've won 1 million in poker or even more, and on this very, very consistent basis. And they still are humble about their abilities, and they still realize that they can get so much better. So listen to those guys and just get a little bit of that. Don't think you're the boss or something at micro stakes. That's the worst attitude you can have. And yeah, who do you look up to first within poker? Like, to not putting, like, I asked this question yesterday to Jane Ennis, and I'm going to rephrase it. Who do you learn from, or did you used to learn from the most within poker, not just PLO, but more mentality wise, or outside of poker if you don't have anyone in poker?
So yeah, I pretty much always focused on learning from one person at a time. So in the beginning, it was an Austrian guy, actually, for another poker site, who was called Twice T, who was an awesome guy in real life. And he is definitely the one who had, so he was pretty much also saying that even though he played high stakes, he is still a fish in the game. But he also said that mindset-wise, he is pretty much top 0.2% in the world. Like, he doesn't care whether you are losing 10 stacks in a heads-up match. And as long as you think that you have an edge over the player, you just play. If you told yourself you're playing 10 hours, you're just going for the 10 hours. And he had once this phrase that was pretty cool. Let me see if I can rephrase it. It was pretty much like, position is worth more than cards, and mindset is worth more than skill. So position plus mindset is pretty much how you make money in poker. So he was a guy who definitely grinded hours in poker, and yeah, managed to almost always play A games. So I was really looking up to him from this standpoint. And in general, I would say I look up to people that that consistently manage to get out of their comfort zone, because this is also something that sounds very easy. Like, for example, let's say you should get out of your comfort zone like once a week. And yeah, it sounds great, but it's very, very difficult. So getting out of your comfort zone, being consistent in anything you do, I think those are two things that I really think are hard to accomplish, hard to achieve, hard to learn. But if you have them, then you will be doing very good in life.
That sounds very awesome. I mean, can you name the person again? I didn't quite catch the name.
Twice T. He already retired poker-wise. He's now a businessman. But yeah, he was doing a lot of videos back then, and I was taking notes.
Okay. Sounds awesome. Who outside of poker would you say that? You said, why that learning from one person at a time? Because there's this thing about maybe is it confusing you if you listen to more people?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, especially back then in poker, where there were just so many different playing styles, you just wanted to stick to one. And yeah, I just wanted to pretty much imitate back then this guy as good as I could. And I just thought it was awesome how he played, and also his mindset. And therefore, I was just trying to focus on, yeah, only one style.
Okay, understand. And outside of poker, you mentioned a couple of books, but is this a particular person beside the people who wrote these books?
I wouldn't say so. I don't really have these idols anymore, I think. I just have respect for a lot of people who definitely took some risks in their life in order to accomplish the things that they wanted to. And yeah, but I can't really name. I mean, I could name some of them, but it's not like this big fan base.
Fair enough. What's the best personal poker moment? You said when you discovered Monker Solver. Is that it?
Yeah, that's definitely it. I mean, yeah, I can't add anything to this. This is still true.
Can you describe again your why you make you already answered that, why you make great poker content? It's basically because you feel more drawn to it, and it's less stress inducing than just playing poker. And yeah, what would you teach if you could go back in time and tell Matthias 10 years ago when he started poker? What would you teach Matthias back then?
It's poker related?
In general, what would you tell Matthias from 10 years ago?
I would say don't think too much about things, but do more. I'm a person that plans a lot and also planned a lot for stuff that in the end never happened. So always preparing for the worst, which was actually always having ideas. I could do this and that, and this would be very awesome idea, but then I never did it because something was holding me back, maybe lack of confidence. So yeah, I would say think less and do more. And also don't listen too much what other people tell you, because they might also have a very biased attitude when it comes to, as you said, taking risks. You said your mother was very unaware of taking risks.
Well,
so yeah, just because
I want to say that, like, yeah, sure, just that she wouldn't have recommended me going down that route, like the risks, not unaware. Like she certainly took risks in life, I would say, but she would not take that risk that I took within poker. Like,
yeah, sure, sorry.
Yeah. Don't worry.
So yeah, just do what you want, and yeah, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. There's still, it's not the end then.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very interesting, but also there, I can totally agree with the fact that, you know, sometimes you're thinking too much and then you're doing too little. But at the same time, if I look at my last 10 years, between, let's say, 2010 and 2017, I was honestly not thinking so much. And then the question is, how did that go? And then the question is, yeah, in some way that went okay. I reached some things in poker because I did. But in some ways, I also saw some of those last 10 years as a little bit of failure. I mean, because I could have done so many different things if I just thought more too. So you see, like a lot of these things, to me, there's always two sides to it. And that's so, and I struggle with that actually. And I actually would love to talk about this with so many people, because that see this dualism of so many things in our lives. You know, that we're having these two sides that pull us towards it. Like one side that pulls you towards, yeah, do more, but another side, like if you then, for example, they can also lead you to just keep on doing your job that you're right now doing, right? So that is something that I think is quite dangerous. If you just keep on doing a job because you say, okay, I just do more at work, I just do more, I do it better. But what if your boss is an asshole and just doesn't, like, what's then that going to do? I mean, it's not that I'm saying like this any case has anywhere relatable to you specifically, but I think there is always a dualism going on that you cannot
yeah, what I mean, like I mean, I also worked a regular job like 1.5 years, and I was all the time thinking about like what's my plan now, and maybe should I or shouldn't I go more into poker. And yeah, I was just the whole time debating and pretty much never doing anything about it. And I think this is what a lot of people doing these days. They just don't have the courage maybe to take the step to go for the change, go for the risk. And maybe you don't have to even take a big risk. I mean, it could also very well be just use your vacation, just use your holidays to really go for it, right? I mean, if we talk about poker, just take a 3 weeks vacation, and instead of going anywhere, and just stay at home and go full time on poker and see if you like it, and be honest with yourself. And if you think that you can do it your whole life, or not your whole life, but at least the next couple of years, and then you already might know a way more, and you stop questioning yourself all the time, like, what if I had quit my job, and what if I had tried it? So yeah, you can also go in a step-by-step fashion and always add in a little bit more time if you're enjoying it.
Could it also be that it's less about not thinking too much, but more about how you interpret your thoughts, because you say, okay, if you don't want to think too much. Well, when you had that job for 1.5 years, if you didn't think at all, you would have never left, right?
Yeah.
However, you maybe you think something and then you rethink, and I think it's more the danger of not thinking too much, but more like going into the loop. And
I think it's maybe thinking too much is a bad. I put it very bad. Maybe it's not worry too much about things, right? Because if you think about taking a break or doing something else, then it's oftentimes like we always think like the worst things that can happen. Like, I will never find another job, and I lose my friends. It's a whole new business. There is so much risk. I lose all my safety. So I think that this is pretty much the main issue, worrying too much. And I think a good strategy against that is to, I also learned this from this book I mentioned before, to create another fear of not doing it. Like really exaggerate that fear. Like what happens if you are not taking the step? You will be in this rat race forever, and you might regret it that you didn't go for it back then. And so you couldn't fulfill your dreams. So always, I think this is true for every fear, because rewarding is never feels as strong as the punishment, right, for us. And that's a very natural thing for us, because that's how we survived, how our species survived. But try to create fears of not doing something. If you have a fear of anything, so what happens if you are not doing it? I think that's also a very good, very, very good approach to get rid of your fears and to finally take a step and change something.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's one resource that I can think of that also was going to that direction, and it's Mark Manson, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I like that book.
I also wanted to read that, but that's definitely on my list. Yeah,
I can highly recommend it to you, because he also doesn't just make a theoretical part of it, but he also has so many examples in there. I don't even remember what the name of that rock star was, but I think there was like a rock star group, and then there was this one guy, he got kicked out. And his personal value system could have been, he could have always looked up to that rock band who I don't know if it was the Beatles or some really, really famous or just musician, I don't even know if rock, whatever. Doesn't even matter. But he could have just said, look, now these guys who have continued to be a band, they are so successful and I'm not. Like, if he only related to them and made himself feel bad about it, that he was no longer part of that group, then his value system of trying to reach that level would have made him feel terrible. But instead, he didn't. He went on to live the ordinary life, and he was happy with it. So I think that was maybe goes also in a little bit different direction, but it just shows you that you can worry so much about what you don't have and then not see what you have. And just he was then feeling gratitude towards what he had, and just was fine not being part of that super success, because he didn't compare himself too much anymore about what people thought of him, of his success, and he found personal success. And that was really, really, for me, that was one of the best stories that I heard in that book. And I thought it was super helpful, because if that person made himself mad about this big opportunity of being world famous in that band, well, then he would have ended up really poorly for him. But instead, he went on to have this other life, which turned out to be quite amazing. I mean, that's how the story went.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's also what we were talking earlier, where we said that there are just events happening, and the event itself has no meaning. It's just you that attach a meaning to the event, and you can commit suicide out of it because you can't deal with it, but you can also live a great life after it, as you described it. So it's all up to you, and all up to you how you deal with it. So I think that's definitely something you should definitely take away.
Okay, so with that, I want to leave you the last word. I want to thank you very much for being here on the podcast, Matthias. So it's been a pleasure, and best of luck with your future projects, with PLO Visions, with playing Potemkin, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye-bye.